Okay, so the question has to do with Lucy, who is a fossil Australopithecine. So lived, I'll get these numbers wrong, but lived about 2 million years ago maybe, and is famous because relative to all the other fossil hominids, hers is a largely intact skeleton. So much of what we know about these somewhat bipedal, walking on two-leg, extinct creatures, ape-like creatures, but that had at least some potential to walk upright. Most of what we know about most of those species is from a few skull fragments or arm bones or whatever. Lucy is a largely intact specimen, and that's why she's famous. So the scientific viewpoint begins by assuming macroevolution to be true, that all life is related through simple procreation and natural selection acting on gene mutations over long periods of time. Time being not really as long as 13 billion years is a long time to us, but it's not nearly enough time for the wonders of diversity that natural selection is supposed to have created. So when you read any science article on Lucy, it's going to begin by assuming the truth of macroevolutionary theory writ large without any involvement by God. Okay? And superficially, it can sound not only like the folks writing the article knows a whole lot more about it than you do, but it can sound plausible. So I didn't make any attempt in my teaching this morning to explain in any way why I don't believe in current evolutionary theory. I take several classes to do that when I teach a course on science and the Bible. At this point, all I'll say is that, again, I find no real evidence that supports a macroevolutionary view, particularly without the involvement of God, that the sorts of things that are appealed to as evidence, like the fossil record, really don't support Darwinian gradualism in any sense at all. That if the only other option is that God created everything in a Ken Ham sort of way 6,000 years ago just as it is today, well then yeah, if those are the two options, there's a whole lot of evidence on the side of some sort of evolution. But those aren't the only two options, and the whole point of a debate like the Bill Nye Ken Ham debate is that both of those extremes want to act as if they're the only options. Because it's easy for Bill Nye to convince people that Ken Ham's a Looney Tune, and it's much easier for Ken Ham to say, well, if you don't believe exactly as I do, then you must be a godless atheist like Bill Nye. When the truth is in the middle somewhere, that God created over long spans of time, that the fossil record shows that every form of life on the planet came into being suddenly, without precursors, fully adapted to its time on Earth and to the ecosystem which it was a part of, and then left the fossil record just the same as it had entered. Okay? So, the real problem for Christians with things like Lucy is that Genesis doesn't talk about her. But there's a lot of, the Genesis account of creation hits the highlights. It doesn't talk about insects. It doesn't talk about dinosaurs because they weren't around and nobody in Moses' audience would have known what he was talking about if the Holy Spirit had told Moses to write down pterodactyl. Okay, in the same way, the extinct upright walking apes like Lucy are not in the creation record because they weren't around when the creation record was written, and nobody would have known what they were talking about. In fact, nobody would have known in reading the Bible up until about 100 years ago if Lucy had been recorded in Genesis 1.